If you are someone who works in a school, classroom, district, you are surrounded by people talking about social and emotional learning programs or social support programs. We certainly see there's just a sea of choices at this point. So people will ask me or they'll ask Michelle, how is the social thinking methodology different from every other SEL program or social support program in our district or that country or that province? How is it different? And I think what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit is if we think about this idea of multi-tiers of support, which I'll show you a little bit more in a minute, this is what differentiates us from all of the others. The lessons, the strategies, the curricula, the tools, the frameworks, you can use those to cross all three tiers of support. And then you've got, the other one on the bottom, which I'll show you in a minute. This has to do with our kids who have special needs and then our kids who are gifted or highly able. So we have both sides of the spectrum of learners, and our materials are going to cut through all of those areas. The social thinking methodology is metacognitive rather than behavioral. In other words, we're teaching why. Why do we use social skills? Why? Why is it important? As opposed to, here's how you say hi, now go do it. Here's how you make a friend, now go do it. We teach that underlying understanding. Our work is designed to complement and actually embed into academic lessons. The social thinking methodology is 25 years old. 26 years ago, Michelle Garcia Winter was working in the schools, and she started noticing kids who were struggling with some interpersonal or some social kinds of learning instances were also struggling with reading comprehension of literature or writing to different points of view or to a different audience, which are part of the academic standards, but they're also part of social. So she started connecting the two. And that is, again, what makes our work so different is it's embedded in the academic standards. We use visual supports. Now, that's pretty common in most programs. It's critical. It's certainly critical for social learners who need extra support, those IEP learners, the learners maybe with some lagging skills, absolutely. But also on the other side of the spectrum, which would be, our highly able, our gifted, our twice exceptional, regardless, I guess what I'm saying is, regardless of who you are, visuals are helpful and they allow for that consistent support. We also have vocabulary that crosses between home, school, and different environments that are concrete or very literal ways of talking about abstract social ideas. For example, give you an example, the idea of take a seat, pay attention, show respect, all very, very abstract. We use very literal, clear, explicit vocabulary. For example, we might say, read the plan or follow the group plan or figure out the group plan, as opposed to come over here to the rug and sit in a circle. So we're using these clear vocabulary, which are also highly visual. We also avoid the assumption that all learners are going to learn in the same way. We believe and have 30 years of experience working with different kinds of learners, and we know that learners have different learning characteristics and learning styles, and we try to adapt and use our materials to fit the learner. We are not a good fit for every single learner, but we are for many, or even I might say most. And our work is accessible to gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, therapists, caregivers, support staff. It's not something that only certain people can use. You have to have a certificate or a license or specialized training. So the triangles that you saw, those really are based on MTSS, which is this multi-tiers of support. And this had its roots in RTI, which is response to intervention. And I worked in an RTI school for about 16 years. The idea behind that is that, hey, there are some students out there who have lagging skills, or they may be at risk for, reading We're worried about their reading, we're worried about their social development, we're worried about their behavior, their emotions, etc., their language. How about, rather than just refer those children to special ed services, instead we give them some supports and see how they respond. And if they respond to that, then, okay, something else is getting in the way. So I like the idea of response to intervention, which was the, kind of the grandfather of MTSS. And so if you go online, you will see thousands of these images, these little triangles. Sometimes, green's on the top, sometimes it's on the bottom. It doesn't matter, regardless. It's the bottom of the pyramid is usually tier 1, which is all students. Gen Ed, inclusion-based, all students can benefit from this. What I'm teaching you is good for everyone. The middle is tier 2, which is more specialized, small groups. Often special ed students will meet in small groups and do a little bit more, a little extra, maybe pre-teaching or reflection after the activity. And then the top little part of the triangle is intensive and specialized. So as we're thinking about SEL programs, most school-wide, district-wide, statewide, whatever, most programs are really designed for tier 1. They're great. They're solid for offering broad brushstrokes or introduction to generic social and emotional skills. And if you're a neurotypically developing student and your brain is wired to go that way, this is perfect for you. You're going to take it in, you're going to learn, you're going to apply it, and go forth. But as I mentioned, there are certain social concepts that are very abstract and not great for students that are maybe take a little more processing time, or maybe some of the social and emotional learning is not intuitive to them. And so what everybody else is learning really quickly, I might need a little more support. Which brings me to tier 2 and tier 3. Now there's plenty of programs out there as well where they're very specialized, and they're often either social communication, social language, social skills, and they really are designed for tiers 2 and 3. But because they are so specialized, the problem is to pull those back into a gen ed setting. Gen ed teachers will often say, it's just too much. There's too many words here. I need to know, what are my materials? What's the goal? What do I teach? What are my expectations? So really what schools need, they need something that they can use in tiers 1, 2, and 3. Now to complicate that, we get into twice exceptional, gifted, highly able. We take the same MTSS kind of model, and you can see there's two sides. There's 2 tier 2s, there's 2 tier 3s. Whereas on the one side, we have our students who need individualized and specific support for, say, some lagging competencies or skills, or just really getting access to some materials. That would be in the red tier 3. Then the other side, we have our highly able students who need enrichment and supports. And honestly, if we are going to be serving all kids, we have to think about this entire set of learners. And it's easy to go, that student is, they're so gifted, they're so smart, they're probably not going to need those extra supports, but they do, both sides. And again, to complicate matters, so many of our students are twice exceptional. That is, they may be gifted in intelligence, and they may also have a specific learning disability, or they may have a diagnosis of ADHD, or they may be autistic, and yet they're also quite gifted. So we see that routinely. Here's the reality. Most of the same social concepts that are relevant for tier 1, they're still relevant for tier 2 and 3. They go up, down, they go side to side. If you're thinking about embedding those and moving those into academic parts of the day. That doesn't mean you're only going to teach in the gen ed classroom. It means it's some of the same concepts that I'm teaching all of you. Now I can also teach in small groups, and I can even target some individualized lessons for students. So if you think about this specifically, we are talking about things in the educational standards like reading comprehension of literature. It is rich. Literature is just rich with dialogue, which makes a student have to think through other people's minds back and forth. To follow a plot, you have to be thinking about point of view, perspective taking. Again, when you're writing a paper for one teacher who expects this sort of writing versus more scientific versus more floral, then you are writing to different points of view. Also, obviously, as you're studying history and you're looking at motives and intentions for wars and different meaningful events in history, that is all of that is richly formed by, it's a foundation of, let me see if I can make up a word for it. Regardless, it is the foundation. The social world is the foundation for the academic world. And so why wouldn't we embed those together? So that gets back to the question, how is the social thinking methodology different from everything else that's out there? Again, you got a lot to choose from. The answer is the flexibility of our framework, our tools, our strategies to cross layers of support and teaching, and that I will never say that we are a perfect fit for all students, because we are not. You have to think about student first, support second. Not here's the supports, now go fit it to the students. Student first, support second. There is something in our methodology for most students. And we like to talk about not social emotional learning, but we like to talk about social, emotional, and academic learning. That's the foundation upon which the social thinking methodology was originally formed. Those are our roots, and that's really where most of our materials are designed to connect the two. So hopefully that will answer the question, and we'll continue to try to explore that in our future articles, our future conferences and workshops.